All right, good morning, good morning. Welcome to Market Pulse this Wednesday. And of course, we are looking at the Kenya Airways half-year results. And for the very first time in about a decade or so, the airline has posted profits. And we're not just talking about operating profit, we're talking about net profit of about 513 million shillings. And to help me understand what exactly happened, what changed, I know it has been a journey. I'm here with Allan Kilavuka, the CEO of Kenya Airways. Allan, karibu to the show again.
Thank you very much, Jimmy.
All right,
Good
glad to have you. The last time we were having this conversation at your offices, you were very optimistic of what the future holds, and going by the numbers that we saw being reported, I mean, we can see where that optimism was coming from. And I just want to understand, when you look at your operations, what changed to get us here? I know it has been a journey, but just take us through that journey and how we got to profitability again.
Yeah, thank you, Jimmy, and thank you for inviting me. Very glad to be here and very glad to be announcing this milestone, these very good results that we've posted for half year of 2024. I always take the analogy of a gestation period. You know, for a child, it takes 9 months until they give birth. It doesn't matter how many women you bring, whether you bring 9 women, it will not bring it to 9 months. It will not bring it to 1 month. It takes a whole period to mature the baby and then to deliver the baby. And so when we started this journey in 2020, 2021, we had actually forecasted that we will break even in 2024. And then we had said we were going to make an operating profit in 2023 and so on. And the journey, it's called Project Kifaru.
Yeah.
So it's a very systematic, planned strategy of getting to where we are today. Now, the whole idea is not to make a profit, is to be sustainable.
Yeah.
Because the mission of the organization is contributing to prosperity, not just in Kenya, but in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, for you to be able to do that, you need to make sure that you are commercially viable. And commercial viability is demonstrated by at least breaking even, you know, meeting your bills, and then making money. So there are certain things that we have done right from 2021 up to now, including really looking at our network, making sure we have the correct fleet, re-looking at our costs, so cost containment, actually bringing down the cost, looking at our assets, productivity, our people productivity, looking at our culture, re-looking at how we serve the customers, and then eventually operational stability. Yeah. So all those things working together very systematically. We also looked at what can we innovate, what can we do differently, what can we add, and then eventually now we've gotten to this place where we've demonstrated commercial viability. We did it actually last year when we were operationally profitable. This year we went one level higher, and then eventually now what we want to do going forward is to raise capital so that long term we can be sustainable. All right,
and Allan, again, just talking about the sustainability aspect of the business, one of the things that you said is that the need for this capital injection for the airline to continue being sustainable. And therein lies the question of how much capital are you looking at? Remember, there has been this conversation around trying to get a strategic investor. So how much are you looking at them putting into the company?
So today we have a negative equity position. What that means is that because of the many losses that the company has been incurring over the many years, it has eaten into the reserves, and now we have negative equity. Yeah. So that is technically, that's not a good position to be in. It means that you have a very weak balance sheet. Now, the negative equity position today is close to $1 billion. So that would be the sweet spot. But what we are saying is you need to value the company properly, professionally, is what we're going to do in the next few weeks. And then look at how much would that 49% of that be. That's what we're going to be asking for injection for. Because on the one hand, you want to invite a strategic investor. On the other hand, you want to make sure that it remains a Kenyan company because that's the only way we'll continue being a national carrier.
So basically what I'm hearing you say, Allan, is whatever the strategic investor has to put in, you're looking at them getting an equity of about 49%.
That's right.
All right, because, and this is something that we were talking about yesterday during the briefing, and there's the question of debt to equity ratio.
Correct.
It's currently at 1 to 13. And in terms of nominal figures, what does that look like? What is the airline sitting on?
Yeah. So you see, today, the debt level is actually close to 120 billion Kenya shillings, is about $1 billion. So again, like I said, we are negative equity anyway to begin with. We want to improve that. If we can bring in equity close to that number, that's negative equity, then you'll rebalance the debt to equity close to 1 to 1. A lot of the debt that we're talking about is debt shareholder loans. So these amounts that you keep hearing about that government is bailing out Kenya Airways is actually loans to Kenya Airways. With the belief that Kenya Airways is going to pay it back. But Kenya Airways can only pay it back if it's commercially viable and if it's turning profits over the years. So now, you know, after we've reached this milestone going forward, once we stabilize the balance sheet, once we get injection of capital, we should be paying back dividends and we should be able to repay back any loans that we have borrowed from lenders and from the government. All
right, so Alan, and I know probably with this question I might be reaching and might be probably I'm being too ambitious to hope that you'd give me a name, but this strategic investor, have you settled on a strategic investor? Because I know from your presentation you're saying you're looking at closing this by the end of the year.
Yeah, so no, I'll answer the question. So we haven't, but we have leads. This process is two-track. The first track is reaching out to potential strategic investors and speaking to them directly. And second one is to a formal process where we have a financial advisor who is actually going out scouting for potentials and then seeing whether they match with Kenya Airways. So the first track, we've identified a few potentials and we are talking to them. Of course, there is a non-disclosure agreement that we have with them. Because of requirements by their own markets not to disclose. And as well, we also are in the same situation. So the important thing is what kind of strategic investor are we looking for? So first of all, we're looking for a strategic investor who can indeed inject capital to begin with, number one. Number two, the strategic investor should be able to add value to our business. So we found that there are some investors who, for example, if it's an airline, they can complement our network, for example. If it's not an airline, it's maybe an investment bank. They can help us restructure the way our balance sheet looks like. If it's an IT company or an ICT company, they can help us remodel or modernize our IT infrastructure, and so on and so forth. So we're looking for people who can add value. And then we are also looking for, of course, a company of integrity, that can match the values that we have in Kenya Airways.
All right, and I'm sure for a lot of these investors and partners, one of the key questions that they will be looking at is your routes, revenues, and how to optimize that. And I just want to know, looking at the next half of the year, looking into 2025, what is this plan around that?
So in fact, so we look at it in 5 years because, you know, if you look, when you're managing an airline and you look at it year by year, then you get lost because it's a long-term assets and long-term viability. So in the next 5 years, our hope is to grow our fleet by about between 30 and 40%, depending on the availability of fleet. Secondly, is to grow our destinations. Today we fly to about 48 destinations. We want to grow it to about 60 destinations in the next 5 years, depending on the viability of the availability of the fleet. The challenge that we have today is getting fleet when we need them, getting aircraft when we need them. And what is the reason for that? The reason for that is because Airbus and Boeing have a backlog, huge backlog of aircraft, delivering new aircraft. So the people who are supposed to take delivery of new aircraft, then they're holding on to their existing aircraft, number one. Secondly, we also have a shortage of spare parts for existing aircraft. Because all the new spare parts that are being built for the ones that are being fast-tracked, the current new aircraft. So there's a crunch in the market, and that's why you're seeing difficulties in operations. You're seeing startled growth. Growth is not growing as much as it should.
And just speaking about the Kenya Airways fleet, there's a question around the planes or the equipments that were on lease. Can you just talk to us about that? Are they still on lease, or do you have them back in the fleet? And also, what does the future look like? Are you looking at getting them back, or are they going to continue being on lease?
No, so we don't have any aircraft on lease. We've not leased out any aircraft. So many years, well, not me, it's 2016, we had some aircraft going to Oman. They have come back. Oh, now I understand what you're saying. I've just remembered one. Came back to Oman. Then we did what we call, we also did a wet lease to Congo for 2 of our Embraer,
Yeah.
but those ones also came back. Now, what you're referring to, I think what you're referring to is some aircraft that we sent to Turkey,
Yeah.
the 777s. So 2 of them, we've actually given out the lease. They no longer belong to Kenya Airways, so they are with Turkish Airline. But there's one that is owned by Kenya Airways, a 777. And that lease is expiring in 2026. That particular aircraft, we are planning to bring it back in 2026. It's a huge aircraft, which should be able to help us resolve the problem that we have in shortage of aircraft.
All right. And Allan, again, looking at policy frameworks in the area, in the routes that you operate, and we know that taxes, for instance, in Kenya has been quite a headache. I just want to know, how has that changed the operations of the airline?
Yes. And taxes and costs, not just in Kenya,
Yeah.
in Africa, are extremely high. The estimate is that the cost of airlines operating in Africa is between, it's at least 40% higher than any other place in the world. And in fact, in some places, it's over 100% higher. And why is that the case? Is because we have an infrastructure deficit in those places. In some countries, you don't even have fire equipment, so airlines have to invest. Airlines have to invest in security so that they are allowed to fly. And they are compliant when it comes to security matters. So those additional costs for trying to be compliant in Africa adds an additional burden to us as a country, and to us as an airline, African carriers. And so those difficulties are there. So in addition to that is what exactly you said, taxes. You know, what stifles growth in Africa, one of the reasons that growth in Africa is stifled is because moving from Kenya to even Uganda, there's something called air passenger service charge.
Yeah.
We pay $110 for that. In countries like in Europe, you pay $13. So 10% of what we pay here.
Yeah.
And those are the kinds of things that stifle growth.
All right. And again, I know when it comes to fuel, particularly, this is a major pain point for airlines. It's one of the biggest cost implications. And I just want to know, what are you doing in that space? Are we back to hedging, or what is the plan?
Yeah. So we have a hedging policy, fuel hedging policy. We hedge a certain percentage of our fuel, not 100%.
Okay.
Because again, hedging is not, you know, you can hedge and lose a lot of money.
Yeah.
So we only hedge a portion of it. But for the last few years, we don't have hedge positions because of the volatility of the fuel price. And actually, I think it has served us well.
Yeah.
So we've not been hedging for the last, actually 4 years, since COVID. But we continue to look at the risks involved. And when we think it is possible, we will actually go back to hedging. But for now, we are not hedging for fuel.
All right. So 2.54 million passengers. What is the plan to grow that number?
Yeah. So the only way to grow the number is 3 areas. So internally, what you do is you improve your efficiencies so that you attract more people, and your service to the customer, both in flight and on ground. So that's one thing.
Yeah.
Secondly, is to give customers as many options as possible. This increase your frequencies and also increase your destinations.
Yeah.
This is what I was referring to earlier, that we're going to increase our destinations to 60 in the next 5 years, but also increase your frequencies. So fly more. If you're flying 3 a week, you go to fly and fly. So for example, to New York, we started, when COVID started, we were flying 3 times a week. Then we moved to 5 times a week, then to 7 times a week, so daily.
Yeah.
Now we're flying 9 times a week. So in some days we're flying twice. And we're going to try and do the same in other destinations.
All right. So this has been touted as one of the most political years globally. And I just want to understand, has that had an impact on the business, and particularly looking at the different routes that you fly to? Have you been forced to cut down on the number of flights or increase?
Yeah. No, that's, again, a very, very, very good question. Yes, it has. Starting with here in Kenya, with these protests that have been there for the last few months.
Yeah.
Of course, several people have been discouraged from coming to Kenya. Kenyans also themselves have not been flying out as much as they should. So that has stifled growth. But looking at other places in Africa, we used to fly to Khartoum. As you know, there's conflict there, so we stopped flying to Khartoum.
Yeah.
You know, we fly to Somalia, but time and again we suspend flights because of security situation. Now, when you on your pathway to Europe or on your pathway to west to the US, you have to overfly certain countries which have conflict. Like when there was conflict in Niger, you have to bypass it, which increases our cost of operation because of fuel ban.
Yeah.
Same thing when you're going up through Sudan. Again, same thing. You have to, try and bypass it, and same thing. So it increases the cost of operation because of those conflicts. And when you have, generally speaking, when you have elections in countries,
Yeah.
in fact, interestingly, even the US, people reduce flights to those countries. So people travel less. And this year alone, we had 70 elections. Some have happened, and some are going to happen later on this year.
All right. Now, so Alan, the other thing that in the last half was quite a pain is the question around FX and FX losses.
Correct.
And I just want to know, has that sort of settled, and where are we now compared to last year?
Yes. This one is, again, very, very critical. So for us, we deal a lot in Forex. So partly is we sell, especially to Europe and to the US, we sell in dollars. But you have to remember that we also incur money. Our expenditure is mainly dollars. So when you pay for fuel, we pay it in foreign currency. When you're paying our leases, we pay in foreign currency. When you're buying spare parts, they're all in foreign currency.
Yeah.
But also we collect about 35% to 40% in US dollars,
Yeah.
and then the rest in some hard currencies. So that helps. It's called a natural hedge, because your income is partly in dollars, but your expenditure, 70% of your expenditure is in dollars.
Yeah.
So that kind of somehow balances out.
Okay.
Now the issue is if you have also borrowed heavily in dollars, because that one is sitting in your balance sheet, so you have to repay in dollars.
Yeah.
Now with the loss of value of Kenya shillings, we do not have a natural hedge, like I've explained when it comes to income and expenditure, on your obligations. So then you incur something called a Forex loss, which is what we were incurring the previous years. In fact, last year, our Forex loss was about 18 billion Kenya shillings. That hit us on our bottom line straight on.
Yeah.
Fortunately, this year, because the shilling has stabilized, we did not get any Forex losses.
All right.
And that helped us in our results as well.
All right. Now, the other pain point that this is sort of a storm that is currently brewing is the Adani deal. And I know as a player within the JKIA space, one of the things that the proposals from what has been reported is the fact that this deal intends to increase fees and levies. And I'm sure parking fees is something that KQ pays. And I just want to know, once that parking fee is increased, how is that likely to affect the operations of KQ?
Yeah. So first of all, I have to say we believe we will be engaged. There's still discussions. I think it was a proposal from Adani.
Yeah.
So we will have our day in court. We'll have the discussion with the powers that be. But more importantly, it is important for that airport to be modernized. In fact, it is urgent. It is very, very important for the airport to be modernized. Yes, indeed, we will have an engagement as to how that should look like, because we are the biggest player, for sure. We're the biggest stakeholder by far, because we are the biggest users of the airport. We control about 70% of that airport. So it is important that we have that discussion with the people who are intending to take over, and even discuss the issues around fees. Because indeed, you're right, we don't want a situation where we have an exponential case of increase in fees. But more importantly, even the design of the airport should be suitable to us as a key player, so that the flows of passengers make sense. Particularly when it comes to moving from international to domestic and so on. And it's easier for passengers to make their way to where they want to go. Also, it should be in tandem to our growth and the growth of the aviation sector in Kenya, so that whatever plans they have, they're taking into consideration what we plan to do from a growth perspective. But all that is going to be discussed.
All right. And clearly, from what I'm hearing you say, is that you have not engaged on these discussions yet. But again, some of those proposals are to not build a new runway. So the question is, much as we want to modernize the airport, but without new runways, doesn't that then constrain your operations?
Yeah, so we can do, from a runway perspective, there are options as well. Again, like I said, I don't know what their option is. Instead of building a new runway, how are they going to redesign the runway so that you have more taxiways, you have outlets that allow operations to continue.
Yeah.
There are many big airports which have one runway, but it depends on how you design that runway so that it's easier for you to exit aircraft and they don't have problems. And then in addition to that,
Yeah.
without building a new runway, what are the other things that should be done? Okay. We as an airline have many good ideas that we would like to contribute to this matter. And I'm sure when we have this engagement, we will contribute those ideas and we'll have a back and forth and see what is the best situation for not just the airline, but for Kenya Aviation as a whole.
All right, so Allan, in closing, what just looking at the next half and going into 2025, where do you see a lot of headwinds coming, and what are some of the areas that you're really optimistic going into the second half, into the next couple of years?
Yeah, so there are also tailwinds, not just headwinds. So the tailwinds, I will start with the tailwinds. I think we've got a good momentum. We have an extremely good staff. I mean, Kenya Airways staff is absolutely fantastic. They do a great job, very highly motivated. So I believe that we will do good there. We have a good name, it's a very strong brand, and so we'll continue pushing. We also have a plan to diversify the business, so that is going to go the right way. Now, of course, there are headwinds. One of them is the uncertainty around some things like Mpox. I'm concerned about Mpox. I don't know how that's going to impact us because judging from what we experienced during COVID, we don't want a similar situation. It's quite devastating for us. So it's a good thing to be prepared for that. Secondly is the macroeconomic environment, particularly when it comes to inflation. Inflation has been quite high, so that has reduced the people's ability to fly and to travel. I know Kenyans want us to have austerity measures, which is good. It's good for the country. But we also encourage people to fly, particularly, government is a big customer of ours, so we want them to fly. And we want them to use Kenya Airways when they fly. And my urge to everybody is to continue supporting us. Be proud of your brand. Be proud of our athletes. They do a fantastic job. We, Kenya Airways, we carry the brand Kenya Airways. So be proud of your brands. Be proud of your country. And we will try and make you proud as well.
All right, and of course, Allan, once again, congratulations on the results that you've just posted, and of course, we'll be looking forward to the next quarters and the next full year, and also just making sure that we track this success as and when it comes. But for now, thank you so much for making time to be on the show once again, and we look forward to hosting you many more times to come.
Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you for inviting me.
All right, and that's all the time we have for you on Market Pulse this Wednesday. Remember, you can watch the conversation on Citizen Digital, as well as listen to the discussions on Hot 96 every Wednesday, only on Market Pulse.